Like my previous video, I'm using the specimen paper 1 from AQA. We're looking at question 5 and this famous picture. If you've been watching my videos, it's famous anyway. And I'm going to take you to a writer now who doesn't deviate from the picture at all. He just decides to describe what's there because that makes him feel safe in the exam. And you can still write well that way, and I'm going to show you how. First, I'm going to show you his writing. The waves pounded on the wall and flew over onto the train. Again, you can see how he's reaching for these powerful verbs. The dangerous driver of the train was very cautious. Here you can see that he's trying to use the SOAP-AIMS ideas, so we've got alliteration there. All of the colourful houses lined up along the train line, waiting to be splashed by the waves. So we've got a much more complex sentence here. We've got splashed and powerful verb, and we've also got the houses waiting, and so they've been personified. So we've got good use of personification there. You can hear the smashing and crashing of the waves. So in terms of SOAP-AIMS, he's starting to use onomatopoeia here, those words that sound like the thing they're describing. And he's also using the final S of SOAP-AIMS, the senses. So he's really working to get the techniques, even though he's playing very safe, just describing what he can see in the picture. It was like a tsunami, so not that imaginative as similes go, because waves, tsunami is a wave, but it is still a simile, and you can see that he's trying to use those SOAP-AIMS techniques. All the houses were in line to get flooded and to be broken. He's nearly getting on to personification here. If he'd talked about them being parading or queuing in a line, then that's something that people would do, and it would be a proper personification. All of the seawall was like a bystander. Again, he's thrown in the simile, and this one does work. They're standing by, the seawall is standing by, unable to resist the waves that are coming. And then he's got this correct use of the semicolon, which links two related sentences together. So although the writing isn't especially interesting and he's played safe, he has used lots of SOAP-AIMS, and so he can get quite a bit of credit for his work. Now, what I'm going to try to show you is how you could use that same idea of safety, sticking to the picture, but also put many more SOAP-AIMS techniques in order to impress the examiner. So I've rewritten it using the same ideas that my student had, but I've got a secret technique that's going to help me get a higher mark, and that is I'm going to choose a viewpoint. And for my students, I think the best way to explain it is to have a moving camera that wants to engage a cinema audience in the fate of the passengers and the houses. And by getting a moving camera to move around the scene, or if you prefer, several cameras to move around the scene, you will always be writing about the scene from a different perspective. That way it'll never turn into a story, because all these cameras are filming at the same time. They're just seeing different things. Having the camera move also gives my students a way to think about where else in the picture they can go. So waves pound the wall, reaching over onto the train like giants' fingers. So here I've kept his idea of the simile, but I've added extra information to make that simile more powerful. Still slippery, because then the reader will realise that the waves are watery and not necessarily too powerful, but gaining a stronger grip. And so now this becomes personification. The simile is extended so that the waves are behaving in a human-like way, even more so than they were here. Aware of the danger, the driver brakes. So good writers often move the subordinate clause about So an average writer would have said the driver brakes, comma, because he's aware of the danger. But doing it this way puts the danger first, so it makes it more powerful. The danger comes first in the sentence. The other thing you'll notice is I've swapped from the past tense, pounded and flew, to the present tense. So the effect of having it in the present tense makes the drama more immediate. So that's a really good tip to you when you're writing your description. Do it in the present, and if it's a dramatic description, and it just seems that much more powerful. The smash and crash of waves intensifies so that frightened passengers can hear them even above the screaming brakes. So he was giving us the smash and crash of waves, and I thought, well, I'll just add some extra sound in here, the screaming brakes, and I've also introduced contrast. So this is a really loud noise, but the waves are even louder in contrast, which will make it more dramatic. I've highlighted this in yellow because it's the only part of his writing that I've had to move. So if we go back to this, we've got the waves, and that also describes the waves. But this bit describes the houses. So I've moved this so that it goes with the other description of the houses here. And then it's more fluent. So let's go back. You'll see there's a description of the house, and now it carries on here. In slow motion, houses look down, lined up like witnesses. Do you remember he just had them lined up? So I've turned that into a simile that personifies it. They're like human beings, witnesses. And the use of witness also suggests that something bad is going to happen, doesn't it? They're going to be witness to a crime. So here, potentially, the destruction of the train. Their colourful faces bracing for the waves. So now I've personified the houses. I've got the powerful verb, bracing. So they're scared about the waves that they know will slap them. Again, that powerful verb. Windows like disbelieving eyes. So I'm carrying on this idea of personification. And good writers do that. They'll extend it as far as they can. So I'm imagining the windows of the houses are like eyes. Again, that's personification. They meet the wall of water like an approaching tsunami. So I've kept his simile of the tsunami. They are bystanders, helpless and afraid, and I've kept that idea he had of them being bystanders. But I hope you can see how I've tried to put Sopame's techniques absolutely everywhere. There are adjectives all over the place, so a stronger grip, frightened passengers, screaming brakes, colourful faces, disbelieving eyes. You can see that I'm putting adjectives in quite regularly. Approaching tsunami, and then I've got that double adjective that I talked about in my previous video, helpless and afraid, and that's often a powerful way to describe your noun here, the bystanders. I'm also showing off to the examiner. I'm having quite a few long, detailed sentences with several clauses in them. So that's a clause, that's a clause, that's a clause, there's a phrase. Longer sentences with lots of punctuation. I'm starting to be more adventurous with punctuation. Actually, if I wanted to show off to the examiners more, I could say this is an explanation of that. Hopefully you'll remember that explanations are introduced with a colon. It didn't need a colon, but I'm thinking tactically for the exam there. I'm going to put one in just to show the examiner that I know how to use it. Again, I've got these long detailed sentences where I'm making sure that I use commas correctly to separate my clauses. And I've got a contrast here with a short sentence for effect. It's got to meet the effect that I'm after. So for example, I want to pull the reader up here to suggest the same movement of the train. The train driver tries to stop, and I actually make the reader stop here by having a new paragraph and a short sentence. It's a neat little trick to cause the reader to pause and wonder what's going to happen next. That short one-sentence paragraph is often very effective. And then my alliteration here has been quite subtle. I don't know if you've noticed it, but I've got witnesses, will, sorry, I've missed a bit there, and waves, and let's carry on, windows. So you can see that although the words aren't directly next to each other, you can see that because the pattern is repeated, it looks intentional. And you might even go so far as to say this mimics the action of the waves, because we associate the W with the waves, and these W's, these waves, just keep coming. So that's another way to impress the examiner, where you repeat a technique subtly so it doesn't get overdone. Now bear in mind this isn't purely my own piece of writing, so you could write better than this, but I want to show my students that you can take an initial idea that is using quite a few techniques from SOAP aims, but writing sentences which are not that adventurous, and how you can combine them to write much more ambitious sentences using the same kinds of ideas. So now if we jump to the mark scheme, that is starting to be compelling and convincing. So it's definitely on the borderline there. It would certainly get into the 19. Let's have a look at this. Is the register convincing? Yes, it is. Is it assuredly matched to purpose? Probably. You might think that there are too many similes or too much personification. You might think that some techniques are overdone, but equally another examiner might say no. Is the vocabulary extensive and ambitious? Well, I've tried to be. Is it sustained crafting of linguistic devices? Well, again, that's a judgment call. It's got lots of linguistic devices in there, loads of metaphor, loads of simile, playing around with the adjectives, quite a lot of the sentences, of the senses. But is it sustained crafting? One examiner might say, oh, there's just too many similes, and so you're relying too much on one thing. It really is going to be a question of gut judgment. Does it have varied and inventive use of structural features? Well, looking at the train from different points of view is a structural feature. You know, looking at it from a high up view, where the waves are coming towards the train, is different from looking out from the eyes of the houses. That's quite a different way of looking at it. And I say that is quite an interesting structural feature. Then you've got the one sentence paragraph, which is quite an inventive structural feature. Has it got a range of convincing and complex ideas? Well, for its length, it probably does. And are the paragraphs fluently linked? Yes, they are. So it's definitely getting into this band. Even though it's not that adventurous as a piece of writing yet. If we look at the lower part of the band, is the vocabulary convincing? Yes, it is. Are the descriptions convincing because the purpose is to describe? Yes, they are. Is there conscious crafting? Has the writer really thought about the effect of the similes and metaphors and personification? Yes, they have. Are the structural features varied? Yes, we've got lots of different sentence types, different paragraph types, these different perspectives. Is it highly engaging? Well, you might say no, or you might say yes. That's a question of judgment. And are the paragraphs consistently coherent? In other words, do they make sense all the time? Yes, they do. So, it's not going to be at the top up there, 22 to 24. But it's definitely going to meet those, and that is probably going to be the B and A borderline, or the 6-7 borderline. I say probably, we don't know. It might even be a full 7, a full A grade. We'll just have to wait and see. So hopefully you can see how to extend the skills you already have, like this writer, into something more ambitious by playing around with different viewpoints and adding extra detail to all your similes, metaphors and personifications. So good luck with your writing. If you'd like more videos, don't forget to subscribe, and if you'd like to see top answers, buy my guide.